Good afternoon, committee members. The time is 4 minutes after 4, and we will bring the meeting to a start. I'm just going to close that because I'm getting some reverb. The first item on our agenda is roll call. So I'll start on my left. Committee member Markman.
Present.
Committee member Harrington.
Present.
Committee member Stacey.
Present.
Committee member Bergsund. And committee member John Sherm has indicated that he is not able to make it today, but will try to attend by Zoom as a member of the public and may make comment during public comment period. The next item on our agenda is the nomination and election of a new chair and vice chair. So I will turn that over to the committee members right now to see if anybody has any nominations.
We're without a chair. If anybody wants to, they can. I'll nominate Charlie. Yeah, I think I need to learn about our schools.
Yeah, if we just have somebody brings a motion.
All in favor? All opposed? Great.
All right, we have a new chair, and we also need a vice or deputy chair.
Okay, I propose Nick Markman. Sounds good. All in favor? All in favor? Aye. Aye. Okay.
All right, thank you very much. And on that note, committee member Charlie Harrington, are you comfortable with chairing the rest of this committee?
Yes.
Okay, great. If you'd like an agenda or any other materials, we can.
Okay. Turn this on. Well, next up, we have approving the minutes from our last meeting, which I see was May 15th on 2024. Do you have any comments from the minutes or any questions on the previous minutes? So typically we will get those sent to us. I'm not sure exactly how long after the meeting, but certainly with the subsequent meeting, you can get the physical copy and the digital copy of it to review.
And also to clarify, even though the new members weren't here at the last meeting, they are able to vote to approve the minutes.
Okay, yeah. Anyone want to
Move
motion?
Yeah, move to approve the minutes.
Second. All in favor of approving the minutes from the last meeting?
Aye.
Aye. Great. Perfect. Tony, would you please take it away?
Thank you, Chair. I have a very quick report. We have been doing a lot of vegetation and landscape maintenance over the last few months. It has come to an end, but our contractor has been hard at work maintaining the roadways and median areas as well as the landscapes around city properties. There was a big spring flush with the late rains, and they're finally on top of everything. So that has been done. And now that we're in the dry part of summer, it's really just staying on top of it. The historic pear tree that is right outside City Hall over here, if people are familiar with it, there's a post in front of a very old pear tree. We had, and for the sake of the new members who weren't here a couple of months ago, we had discussions on what can be done to help to preserve the tree, and we had a gentleman come out from the UC Cooperative Extension who gave us some recommendations. The main one being to bring irrigation to the tree. And so we have installed a small irrigation system around the base of the tree. And the only thing that remains is pruning, really. There are a lot of dead branches on it. When I last spoke to a company, and it was Bartlett's, who are, it's one of their things is quite careful pruning work. They did not want to touch the tree, basically. I think nobody wants to be the last one to have cut anything on a tree that old. But hopefully with the spring, we'll see a fresh flush of growth in there, and we can keep that tree going as long as possible. We have a maintenance worker recruitment that's open right now. As you can see, we have one of our maintenance crew here tonight, who I'll be introducing fairly soon. Right now we're down one person, and in a total crew of 3 people, that's quite a lot of productivity that we're missing out on, and it have been for the whole of this year and some of last year as well. So it's great that the crew have been staying on top of it, and hopefully at our next meeting I'll be able to inform you that we have a new maintenance worker to bring us up to full capacity. An upcoming project to let you know about is the tennis courts resurfacing project, which will be happening before the fall, during or before fall. The CIP fund for this year has an allocation for a general maintenance resurfacing of the tennis courts, which will include restriping of the pickleball court on the other side to where it is right now. So that'll be happening. And then in response to previous meetings and communication with committee member Markman, there has been talk of moving the doggy bag dispenser on San Rafael Avenue that's in the gateway area. And I've been in touch with Town of Tiburon, who are, I'm hoping will be able to move it onto their property. Where the bench is right now at that entrance area is actually Tiburon property. So they were happy to move the trash can from Belvedere into Tiburon property and take responsibility for it. And I'm hoping they'll do the same for the doggy bag dispenser. It makes sense for it to be next to the trash can. And yep, hopefully you'll see that moved here in the next week or two. And that's it from me. Are there any questions?
I do have a question about we were discussing the tree in Community Park, the replacement for the tree, and we were talking about various suggestions for that. I was curious what the status was of the replanting and the tree selection for there.
That's a good question. And there have been questions from community members, including a former council member who was the liaison with the Parks Committee, Master Gardener, former member Campbell, council member Campbell. And he brought up a very, very valid concern of the height of the tree. The tree that we had chosen was I've lost the name now, but it's the same tree as the one that's in front of the yacht club. And Linden, yeah, thanks, Alberto. That tree, there's a question of height, and if that tree goes to full size at Community Park, it'll be a very big tree. There is space in the park for that tree to get that big, but there's a question of whether neighbors behind it would find that acceptable. And there's an ordinance in Belvedere that allows people to maintain their view. So if a tree starts to grow into their view, then they would ask the city to prune it down. And that would be not only a maintenance issue, but it would be an aesthetic issue, because keeping a tree smaller than it could be is you're just not, it's not ideal. So yeah, there is a question of what tree it should be, and I haven't been able to speak to an arborist about a good choice. James Campbell had some choices, and I'd be happy to work with you as chair with that, and as we go, see if you have any input on it.
I think my take was we'd love to have a tree there. We were generally loosely opining on ones that we thought looked nice, but I think the height wasn't necessarily the biggest concern there. So I'd be curious what some options were, and mainly just want to make sure that a tree does get replaced for shade purposes. Yep.
Thank you. Yeah. And there was actually a comment that I did receive, which was maybe there shouldn't be a tree there. So I'm glad to hear that the committee feels or that the chair feels that it's important. So yeah, happy to work with you on that. And if you feel that you need to bring it back to the committee for a decision, then we can do that too.
Cool. Any other questions for Tony at this time? Okay.
And sorry, committee member Markman,
Well,
were you?
one
about
of
to
the
say?
other things that you guys were working on that looks great was clearing out the area adjacent to the playground. We discussed putting a tree there too, and we decided there wasn't enough space. Is the current plan to just have that cleared out, or will some other vegetative growth be put in there? You know the area I'm talking
Yes,
about.
yep,
It-
yep.
And it looks great now, you know?
Right, yeah. I believe there was a tree there some time ago, and it was removed. The direction from the city's arborist was to leave that space open because the tree next to it, which is a cork oak, will grow much bigger, and it would be best to allow the existing tree to move into that space for its branches to grow into that space. And bringing in another tree would be overcrowding the existing trees and that tree.
And
So
so,
there-
so
yeah.
no plan for like a bush or any, it's just gonna be dirt.
Yes, yeah, just that sort of mulched area alongside the playground. It would, yeah. There's no right now. There's no plan to change that.
Cut.
I still think those bouncy things that they have in European playgrounds.
I knew you were going there.
Yeah, I know. I don't know if you've ever seen those. They're like little mini inbuilt trampolines and things. It could be neat. I know it's not within the bounds of the playground, but if we're not putting anything there, it could be fun to have something else in that spot. Not just as a consideration, because it does seem like something's missing from that area.
If you'd like to agendize it, we can
Okay.
look at it at the next meeting.
I'll make a note to consider that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then also just a reminder, at the end of each item, the chair asks for public comment.
Anything else from the committee to ask Tony? Okay. At this time, I'll see if anyone from the public would like to comment on the report from Public Works Director Tony Boyd. Is there anyone online?
No.
Okay, great. Anyone in the room? Okay, perfect. Well, now we can move on to scheduled items. Looks like we have a presentation from Kathy Huber on the painted bins. Great.
I'll give Kathy a quick introduction. Kathy introduced herself to me probably in my second week when I started at Belvedere about 2 years ago, and her organization, which is Painted Bins, and they facilitate the introduction of composting and recycling bins into park spaces around Marin. And in a very short time after that, we soon had these bins in Community Park. So part of the bins, an important part of the bins is the art that goes onto the sides of the bins. And Kathy's organization works with local school kids to produce art in art contests that go onto the sides of the bins. And so Kathy is with us today to give us an update on what they've been doing and where they are with it.
Great. Thank you, Tony. Thank you for having me today. That was a great introduction, Tony. Just to kind of rehash it, Painted Bins is a Marin County organization that works with local schools and communities to reduce greenhouse gases by placing compost bins with children's art in parks and public places. As Tony mentioned, the art is created by local school children. 3rd through 5th graders create art on composting, 6th graders create art on recycling, and the art is selected by an independent jury to go in the bins and changed annually. So you can see, hopefully you all have seen the bins already and the art that's on it. Good. The interesting thing about what we're doing, what we've discovered, so it's not only keeping food waste from the landfill and reducing greenhouse gases, but a big part of what we're doing is creating environmental stewards. We work with all 3 schools in Tiburon, and currently we actually are in 5 communities and 11 schools here in Marin County. We are a project of Sustainable Marin. They're our fiscal sponsor. And we are the waste partner for the Marin School of Environmental Leadership at Terra Linda High School. So we work with the ninth graders, creating more environmental stewards. I love this picture because you can see how excited the three boys are in this picture. Part of what we do is after the art is created, we actually have an art show, and all of the art is on display for the public to see and for the children to explain what their motivation was in the art. It's really, we'll let everyone know, and Tony, you can let this commission know when we have our art show, if you would. And it's really a very special event. But a big part of the reason that we started this was because of SB 1383, which I don't know how familiar you are with this, but SB 1383 requires that jurisdictions reduce their organic waste by 75% by 2014. I think that's a number we're probably not going to make here in Marin County, but a big part of what we were motivated by was how can we help cities do this and do it in a way that unites the community. Oops, wrong thing there. Collaboration is key. As I mentioned, we work with both communities and the local schools, but we also work with local organizations, such as we work with the library to host the art show here. I love this picture too, because at the art shows, the kids really become the teachers. You know, they share their art, they share what, you know, the little girl on the left did a lot of research actually. And they really are very passionate about the belief in saving the earth. We also hold events. Last year, I don't know if any of you were able to come. Last September, we actually had an art unveiling event. When the bins are first installed, we do this. We ask students to come and speak and share what their inspiration was for their poster, why they think it's important to compost, et cetera. And so it's a great opportunity to build community around waste diversion. We're only doing those events when the bins go in, but we do the art shows every year. And this is interesting because one of the things we're learning is a real benefit to the children are the skills that they're learning. And we hadn't thought of this initially, but children are allowed to work in teams of 2 or 3 when they create their posters. So they're learning how to collaborate. They're learning critical thinking skills. What should go on their poster that would make someone stop, look, and learn? Public speaking skills when they speak at our events, and we're going to invite the students to speak at our art shows. And of course, environmental education. We have partners. I didn't put most of the schools on here, but you can see the cities we work with. We've been fortunate to have many financial partners such as TPF, Tiburon Peninsula Foundation, and the Rotary's been a big supporter. And this is, I think, a slide you might find interesting. I mean, so we started in Corte Madera about 2.5 years ago, actually. And as Tony mentioned, we've put bins here into Belvedere Community Park. There, as you probably all know, there are 3 tri-sort bins there. And this will give you the overview, but those 3 tri-sort bins are expected to divert nearly 3/4 of a ton of food waste each year. So according to Mill Valley Refuse, about 15 pounds are diverted from the park each week. So that's great. We have, over the course of the 2.5 years, we've had almost 700 kids create posters, more than 700 kids create posters. And we've had over 1,000 people attend our art shows and art unveiling events. And that really is another important part, is what Tony brought up, is really educating not only the young students, but the public in the importance of keeping food waste from the landfill. Little bit about me. I don't need to spend a lot of time on this, but you might find it interesting to know that I'm probably the oldest person that ever went back to graduate school, and I got an MBA in sustainability, and Painted Bins was actually my capstone project. And Jennifer Fearon, who's also local, I don't know if any of you were here when she presented 2 years ago, was that Tony, I think? She's also involved as our art director. Okay, I thought you might be interested in seeing not all of the art, but a couple of the posters. And I actually brought a couple of samples along because what people don't realize, and I'm happy to pass this up here if you want to take a look at it. And here's that one. So the original art does not go on the bins. We photograph it and place it on this Coroplast panel so that it is protected from the elements. We cover that plastic Coroplast panel with a shield, a plastic shield that's reusable. What's different that we've done this year is we give the schools poster paper and it's 18 by 24, but the panels are 18 by 30. So you can see we put the title, each poster is given. Were you the one that asked about this? Okay. What's that?
It was my wife.
Oh,
She's
okay.
yeah.
Well, that's interesting. I mean, what we're trying to do is actually put the student's name on there, the first name and the first initial, the last name, but we have to have parental permission. We didn't have all that here in the Tiburon schools, so we put the poster name on there. So yeah, so now it does use up that black space. The QR code takes you to our website where there's an educational resources page. And then the last poster, we actually this year are installing 2 more panels at some point on the backs of the bins. So there'll be 2 on the sides, 2 on the backs. And we have created educational posters to help inform the public. One is about the 3 R's of, thank you, of waste management. The other is kind of a did you know, facts and figures about composting. Thank you. I appreciate your support and would like to open it up for any questions.
Are there any questions to Kathy from the committee?
Which was that it's not in any of is it in the Bellevue Tiburon school? I think you said it's in 2 or at the craft line.
It's in, I don't know, so we work with Bel Air Elementary, 3rd through 5th graders. We work with 6th graders at Del Mar, and then St. Hilary, those same grades.
So are the bins at the school?
No. So we have been asked about that, actually. If we could put those there, we need to find money for that, and we haven't done it yet. No, it's a good point, though, because well, and we've been asked for it out in the recess areas too, where there typically isn't compost bins. And the schools have expressed an interest in trying to put the art on their bins too. So we're still working through that as well. But good question. Any other questions? No? Well, thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Does the public have any questions for Kathy? Okay. Thank you, Kathy. I'm excited to see next year's refreshed ones. Thank you.
And just to jump in on with Christina, I believe anybody watching online can raise their hand to if they would like to make a comment.
I do have one comment about the trash cans in the park. It does feel like there's a smattering of different trash can styles. There's the Frog. I love the Frog. There's Kathy's. There's old ones. Is there are we standardizing towards a particular type of can over time as they sort of fall out of service?
That's a great question. I would love to move towards the ones that have been facilitated by painted bins. The great thing about them, I don't know if you've used them, but there's a pedal at the bottom, so you just press the pedal and it opens. And they're also wide enough to fit a pizza box in. So those are 2 typical issues that public bins have. But no, there are no plans to standardize the bins. They're surprisingly pricey, as as you might expect for anything that's has to be bought by thousands of cities around the country. Yeah, and that's so they're typically once you have a bin in place, you hold on to it until it's out of service. Yeah, so I think that's probably the reason that there are a few different styles, is that you know, as long as they're holding up, they're still there.
Yeah, I think it'd just be neat to know when one of the older ones falls out of service, maybe we can put another one of Kathy's in the actual playground area. Would be nice.
Yes, and so just to also elaborate on that a little bit, those I think, I can't remember exactly, but I think they were about, Kathy, you may remember how much it cost for those bins. Yep, 5,300
Oh, mhm.
For each of the three. Right. Yep. Yep, that makes sense, because I had 10,000 over my in my mind. So for the two that we have in the park, it was a little over $10,000, and there was a grant available that we were able to make use of to cover the cost of those. Yeah, but and you know, that grant is no longer available, unfortunately. Just this year they've stopped it. But that's, you know, grants are typically the kind of route to go for that kind of thing.
Great, thank you. Okay, moving on. Looks like we're on to item number 5, introduction of new maintenance supervisor.
Thank you, Chair. And for people who are out and about in the city, Alberto Carranza might be a familiar face as he drives around working and checking on things. He's been with the city for 9 years now, as I learned today. And he's a really great asset that I think a lot of times is under the radar. He stays on top of all of our maintenance work and a lot of the permitting that has to happen in public spaces. So a lot of people may have been familiar with Gerhard Laufer, who is his predecessor, who was here for 34 years. So very big boots to fill, and I'm very happy to say that Alberto has stepped up and is really taking ownership of the position. Do you have anything you'd like to add? Say a few words.
Thank you, Tony. I'm just eager to continue working, providing the quality of service that, you know, Belvedere needs, and continue. I know I need to fill some big shoes with Gerhard being gone now, and I'm eager to do it.
Yeah, thank you, Alberto. This is not as uniform, that just in case anyone was wondering. But yeah, he's on his way home after this, once he's out of here. So he's that's his home gear. Yep, and I'm sure he's happy to take any questions if anybody has any.
Nick, do you have a question?
No, I was just gonna say that the introduction is great. Let us know how we can be helpful, actually, would be the non-question, but the statement, pain points and things, outreach to the community, et cetera. Okay.
Thank you.
Are there moments in going through the queue of things that you have to do or want to do where a decision might need to be made, or it would be helpful to get an opinion on something? Or is it more clear cut, like, okay, we need to just chop this down, we need to do this particular bit of maintenance work? I'm curious where the decision points in a group like this might be able to help.
I guess all depends on the situation. If it's an emergency situation, it just has to be done. And then something that could be we have more time to make a decision on, and then I'll be gladly bring it to the committee.
Yeah. Okay. As a follow-on to that, what does the backlog of work look like? There's probably seasonal things that have to be done every year, but then there might be longer things where you're looking, maybe we'll do this project in 5 years. I'd heard maybe Beach Road itself, there might need to be some reinforcements done over the next 5 years and things like that. I'm curious if there's like a list of these longer term projects or seasonal projects that might be able to share with us out of curiosity or input.
I mean, I think Tony's more into the long-term projects.
Okay.
I mean, I'm more into the maintenance, so
Yeah.
the tree pruning and the, vegetation cutting and
Yep.
replanting plants and
Great.
stuff like that.
Yeah, the trickier decisions that Alberta has are usually, we're luckily we don't usually have emergency situations, but most of his decisions are routine, and there's precedent for everything that's that he day-to-day stuff. And then the bigger stuff does, end up here. And I hope that Roberta will be able, Alberta, I do this all the time, will be joining us for future meetings. Not every meeting, but yep, he'll be here to provide updates and get input.
Great. Any other questions or comments?
Just thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Amazing. Any questions from the public?
I have nothing here.
Perfect. Okay. Moving on to item number 6. Item number 6 is an update on this committee's representation at the Belvedere Emergency Preparedness Barbecue, which was super fun. Nick and I were both there. Nick, you want to go first and share your experiences of that day and what you really focused on?
Sure, yeah. The burgers were delicious,
Yeah.
but not as good as the hot dogs. That
Yeah.
thus concludes my report, as it's hot in here. But yeah, you were more interactive with maps and actual outreach, and so people understand what we do.
So I believe this was the first time that the barbecue had been organized, maybe the second. Do you know, Tony?
I think it was the second.
Second, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Were either of you at the barbecue in the park? No, okay. So there was us, there was police. I think, Tony, you had a station, the library was there, and we had a little booth.
Fire, Audubon,
Yeah.
people.
So it was an opportunity for us to engage with the community and chat with them. I would say my number one takeaway is we were pretty unprepared. A lot of people had nice collateral, like a sign, this is the library, that we don't have any of that. So it might be nice to have some little placard or something for the Parks, Open Spaces, Lanes Committee, if for future events to like plop down next to us. Christina, you were very helpful in getting me some maps that I was giving out to people. That facilitated a lot of interesting conversations talking about, oh, did you know about these lanes? Did you know about the strip beachfront property? So I felt like I probably gave out 10 to 20 copies of the lanes map, which was really nice. And I know we have another discussion topic about making that even better. And the other thing I did was I used this notebook and I collected some feedback from people, and I asked fairly informally, but what can Belvedere do to improve your parks, open spaces, lanes, experience, fun, or life? And I have 4 small bits of feedback I'd love to read. Are you trying to get it? Can we open this one?
We were just seeing, we actually have a project right now to fix some of these windows because they're the wood has decayed on a lot of them. Yeah, that'll hopefully help.
This one is open.
Okay.
We have that side.
There we go. Yeah, sorry for the interruption. Just
No, that feels
Kind of-
great.
Yep.
Okay, so I'll just read the 4 bits of feedback, and I collected names and emails, have not reached back out to them. Okay, so someone named Steve S., his number 1 wish was getting more lanes done, especially artist view. Kirsten Felton wrote in and said, getting access to the beach at artist view. Alex Z asked for lower Woodwardia Lane access to beach. And Robbie, her son, this is when I was talking about the project about slides at Centennial Park, which maybe hopefully we can have a short update on later. He had the quote that if there were slides in one of the lanes or parks, more kids would want to go on walks with their parents, which I thought made a lot of sense. So yeah, so I collected this bit of feedback. I think I mentioned this to Tony in general on this committee, like what is I'd love some more discussion, maybe especially because we have new people. How should we best be reaching out to people, soliciting their feedback, getting information on these projects? Obviously, these are public open meetings. I've been to a lot of them. I don't think we've ever had an online attendee. So maybe we're missing the mark somewhere. We have? Okay.
Maybe not with you.
Okay, not since I've been here. Maybe this, yeah, anyway. I think there's more opportunities to chat with people, share, like, I think that my takeaways were I was giving out a lot of information. A lot of people were said, oh, I didn't know about this. I didn't know about this. And then got some useful insight. So I'd love to do more of these things. It would be great to have some small placard or collateral. And then especially if we're able to center on something that's like a really nice lanes map or public parks map that we can give out more easily and share info about the committee, share info about the town. That would definitely help for the next time we do this.
Yeah, I agree. And it sounds like there is interest from folks in the community.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I agree.
Quick question, just related.
Yeah.
Is there another city event? You know, I mean, that's one, you know, and, you know, there's another one during, and that was the emergency preparedness one.
Yeah.
People might go with that in mind, but I don't know if there's another, you know, maybe there's other ones during the year that we get an opportunity. And I really
Yeah.
wanted to say, I think that was great. One, that you asked the question, and two, also that you collected, people who are interested in being contacted, because that might be something, whether it's, for giving people updates or also for future fundraising.
Yeah.
Starting to build a database of people who are interested, I think is really,
Great, thank you. I guess we could talk about this now, but with new people joining the committee largely refreshing, I was wondering if there were interest in maybe organizing our own small event that we could put in the ARC or something like that. I think, Tony, I've seen something where maybe it's Jane Cooper on the council and then someone else, you know, city manager, Robert might have an open meeting for people to come and chat with them. I wonder if we could facilitate something like that with whoever our next council member representative is. Be cool to meet in the park and maybe go for a walk. I don't know if people would want to do this, but like if you all would want to meet in the park, meet your parks committee, we'd walk some lanes, walk some parks, just chat with people. Even if no one shows up, I think it would be neat to just get out there and move our bodies as opposed to always sitting in here, but make it public so people could join if they wanted to.
Yeah, I think as long as we notice it,
Yeah.
you know, that the meeting will be, you know, whatever at Community Park, next to the playground, or that there will be a a short hike after the meeting begins or something like that. I think if that's what you mean.
That is what I
so
mean.
Just, yeah, kind of getting out a little bit.
Special meeting, which is not part of this meeting, but sort of a special, it would be, doesn't have to be a special meeting, because it would be the committee, more than the committee. But
Yeah.
it would not have any other agenda other than meet your committee and go for a walk.
That is exactly what I'd like to do. So I don't know how to broker that, but I think we could, whatever the recommendation is, but we can make it as formal as we need to, but it's more just a meet and greet and walk around type opportunity. And maybe we can give an update on some of the projects or the lane maps and stuff.
I was very hard to definitely volunteer to be a part of it, but I was also thinking, I just don't know really if there are other pre-existing, I'm always thinking of pre-existing events that already have people going.
Yeah.
And is there something that, you know, there's so many things, for example, at the library.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They do a lot of things at the library, you know, evening events, and maybe there would be one that would already have a nice liaison to what we do, or maybe there is maybe the city of Belvedere, I don't know. We have some of the gear,
Yeah.
all these things that some of which, you know, that always come across in the ARC, that are
Mhm.
special events that the city throws, you know, to, you know, maybe, and so I was
Yeah.
also thinking.
No,
if
it's
there's
great.
Something other than that, other than the one emergency preparedness that also might be a nice connection. to
Totally.
And maybe we'd have to talk to the appropriate people, but maybe we rebrand, you know, since it will be in its third year, the emergency preparedness thing to more of a community day outreach and broaden the scope there, because it already was beyond emergency preparedness,
Yeah.
right? I mean, I know that fire and police services were there, but there were a lot of other parties, and I don't know if we talked to Adam about that or something
Yeah.
else, and kind of broadening the scope of that event, because it is getting a little momentum.
Yep, Adam would be the person to speak to about that, because I think he is the chair of the block captains group, because it's a block captains event.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they, you know, I think Adam reached out to as many people as he could to try and get some community involvement, and that's how we ended up the committee ended up sort of being invited. Yeah, I think, I think the central idea is that in an emergency, your community is critical. And so having as many members at an event like that as possible is important. Yeah, I'm sure Adam would be open to talking more about that.
I would just say that, like, an example of another one, that, again, this is over for this year because the last council in Parks happened.
Yeah.
But that would be a place like, if you had a table, I mean, that's a day when people come, everybody comes, it's a lot of fun. Like, that could be a thing that is in the park. It'd be like, hey, you're welcome to your community park if you want.
Yeah, it's just, it would be natural for us to be there. Yeah,
So
yeah,
something like looking for that too.
that's great. Tony, in terms of moving forward on some of these ideas, maybe starting with the sort of walkabout idea, could I email you to think about a time to schedule that? And probably on I don't know, a Saturday or Sunday morning, we would want to schedule this. I don't know what y'all's schedule looks like, but.
Yeah, well, it's probably best to have a discussion about it in a meeting, so
Okay.
that if there's any public comment, or so that it's created in a so the process of bringing this meeting to the public is in the public eye. So if you like, we can agendize it for the next meeting, and at that meeting, set a date.
Okay.
Discuss it and set a date.
Okay, let's do that. Please, thank you.
All right.
And I think in terms of attaching ourselves to other relevant things, I do feel as if, correct me if I'm wrong, but maybe we could just, Marika, I don't know if you want to start gathering some of those things. I could do the same, and we could just make a list and share it for next time of other events we may want to reach out to the organizers of.
I think if it's on the agenda, then
Yeah.
that's what becomes part of the conversation.
Okay.
Yeah, we can put together
Yeah,
an event list or something. You don't want to spread yourself too thin, but.
totally. Yeah, you don't want to be at everything.
Right, like,
Yeah.
what are the one or two key things?
Perfect. Okay. Okay, any additional public questions about the park BBQ thing? No.
I got a public comment from John Sherm,
Yes.
who is our committee member who was under the weather today. He said that he liked this idea as well.
Great. Thank you, John. Feel better? Okay, perfect. Okay, I'm going to move on. Yes.
It has to do with what you said, how can people contact you or get ideas to you? On the website for the city, there's no way to contact this committee.
Hmm.
No email or anything, nothing says like, that's this committee. It might be useful.
Yes. Tony.
Yeah, I guess staff would be a good place to start. Yeah, if there are
You can
questions.
send questions to you. That would go to the
Yeah,
committee.
yeah, exactly. And committee members are community members, so they're available usually as representatives for anybody who has questions. Public meetings are agendized so that if anybody has a comment on something that they're discussing, so that the meetings would be a place for that. But as staff, we field questions all the time about things that are happening in the city. So you can always contact us, and we can go from there.
I wonder, there's an opportunity for the sort of like request jar. I'm not thinking of the right phrase here. Yeah, comment card or something we could put in the parks or something like that for little bits of micro feedback in some way that might, something that you might want to email this committee for, but it could be neat to think about that, whether it's, I know Jane has the Coyote hotline where you fill out a Google form. There's hurdles to jump through with that, but maybe we have some way from your phone to add something and like give feedback on a park. Something's broken here. This looks dangerous. I have an idea. That could be pretty neat.
Yeah, that's a great idea. And we do also field all of those, definitely. I mean, making it easier for people to give us, any kind of feedback. I think, something like that probably doesn't need to be agendized. That's probably something that we could work on, just as, chair with staff.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you for your question. There's no way to email us.
I have no further public comment.
Okay. Okay, we're on to item number 7, discussion on Belvedere general plan and zoning regulations.
So this is really a continuation of some of the discussions that all the committee members have been having with among staff on the role of the committee and the job of the committee. So this the general plan is actually a very good place to start, because this is really a guideline for city decision making. It's put together with a lot of work and a lot of research goes into all the different facets of the city's role in the community. So this was really something to introduce the committee to, because it wasn't included in some of our conversations. And it has quite a lot of information in it that's useful to the stuff that we talk about. It covers, things like the background and setting of the parks within the city. It talks about the spaces that we have. And just going through the pages here, it provides a map showing where all of the parks and open spaces are, as well as lanes. And it includes a section on lanes, which I think is also very useful, because there has been a lot of talk, and they're quite a big component of what we deal with. So this really leads into the next item. It also, I think, is useful when discussing, new facilities in the city, as we've been talking about, slides at Centennial Park and these kind of things, and trampoline at the playground and that kind of thing. It gives a perspective on that, and it's really, when it comes to council level decisions, we as staff have to make sure that anything that we're recommending to the council falls within the guidelines of the general plan. So it's a very important document, and it's something that we should all really be aware of. So yeah, that's really
How often
why
is
this is in there.
How often is this kept up to date? I'm just seeing some old, out of date info.
It's about, I think, every 15 to 20 years. So this one is I think it's called the 2030 Belvedere 2030 general plan, and it includes goals for also all the departments that the city runs, and it includes things like the housing element, which issues that are very important. So really, this was just some background reading for everybody on the committee. And if there are any questions or anything that anybody would like to bring up or discuss, it's an opportunity to do that. And then the second part of the item is the zoning, which again, it kind of originates in the city's general plan. And we can probably wait to talk about that as a separate topic.
What's interesting here, listing Centennial Park as a specific park here. That's nice to see. Yes, but are there any questions about the general plan?
I just want to call your attention, so at least the community footprint that's in the middle
Yeah.
says it was from a survey dated July 2009.
Yeah.
So I assume that this came somewhere.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So
Yeah.
my guess is that probably from your plan is.
Well, that sounds like, given that this is 2030, there may be a 2060 upon us coming soon. Do you know if they're working on the next version of this? And, specifically how that survey may be structured or come out?
No, but we're in what, 2024 now, so it'll be in the next few years. It takes a couple of years to put something like this together. And the idea is really to fill in the anticipated gaps in the next 20 years or so. So yeah, there's usually a very big effort to have outreach and opportunity for community input on all the different aspects of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would say in general, I've been confused about our ability to conduct research in a structured manner versus anecdotal on this committee, and maybe that's something we could get clarity on. For example, if we had, let's say we had access to some funds for something and we could use them in some way, when and how would we reach out? And Centennial Park slides could be an example of that. Here's a project that we think we deem might be interesting, worth pursuing. There's probably some fundraising element. There's going to be some community engagement, but what is the right time in that process between checking if it's viable versus, asking folks if they even really want it, who may be nearby versus elsewhere? That sequencing of things is really, I found to be challenging over the last year or so on this committee. And I don't know if this provides guidance on that, but.
It does. I think it does provide some guidance on it. And and that's where zoning comes in, for example, because that's, speaking about Centennial Park, that at this point is the biggest hurdle to any changes to Centennial Park.
Yeah.
It's zoned as a zone O space, which is open space, which is primarily scenic. I believe we can pull it up here in a second, but as far as feasibility of structures goes, in local government, it's usually fairly straightforward. Infrastructure is in place to serve a purpose. Safety being usually number one. Recreation has certain areas of the city that are zoned for recreation purposes, and that's where structures for recreation are expected to be placed. So proposing something that's out of the normal kind of template does bring up all sorts of questions that take a little while to kind of work through. As far as funding goes, City Council really, they're the only city body that can authorize new funding for a project. The operating budget, which is the daily running expenses of the maintenance work, for example, is available for some costs. But the process of identifying projects to be funded is something that's in collaboration with City Council, and they're the ones who would approve it.
Okay. I think my takeaway from that is if we're looking at a project, ideally it would fit within the zoning applicable for that particular space. That would be the most straightest path forward. But the follow on to that would be, I would be curious if Centennial Park, for example, I don't know, just to be specific on that one, if it has to move from O to R, I don't know if R is recreation zone, but has that ever happened before? Is it feasible to do that? Or are we saying this is sort of an immutable law that could never be adjusted? And how could it be adjusted?
Yeah, so I had a little chat with Rebecca Markwick, who's the planning director. Zoning usually falls into the planning department, and it's, nothing's impossible, but it would take an amendment to the general plan, and it would need to go through the Planning Commission and City Council. There would also need to be all sorts of documentation that would need to be done. The biggest part of that is probably an EIR, environmental impact report, which is kind of a standard practice these days for any changes of land use. And that can be very costly.
Yeah.
So the first step really would be engaging with City Council and determining if this is something that council would like to pursue or would like the city to pursue.
Okay. Would this be an appropriate time for me to just briefly talk about, or for us to briefly talk about that project? Or would you want to wait until the zoning map discussion?
Isn't that the next item, the next
Oh, on lanes.
bullets on the same item?
Okay, perfect.
So, yeah, I can pull up the zoning map if that's helpful.
Yeah.
So I'll do that. And yep, this item on the agenda was really based on the Centennial Park slides proposal.
Okay.
And so, yeah, this is a good time to talk about it. Right, give me a minute.
I think related to this, there had been some chatter in the ARC around the strip, that beachfront property on the water line. And I think there was some discussion around in the planning committee of it not being maintained as a park. So I do want to read through this document and see what it says about that area. Because that seems like it had come up a few times.
Yeah, so this is the zoning map. And you can see that most of the city is residential. You have low density and medium density and high density. Manufacturing, commercial, church and school, park or public facility, and private recreation and open space. And the open space coloring here is that light blue, which is actually quite difficult to see. But I'll zoom in a little bit on, let's start with community park over here. So you can see that the whole green area over there is City Hall and Community Park. And then we've got some other lots. These are obviously based on property lines. So when you're out there, there are no lines in the sand on the beach, for example, but you know, on Beach Road, I don't know if you can see my cursor on the screen. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So there are actually two different zones right next to each other. My guess is that the green is because China Cabin is on Beach Road. So that green lot would be the area that China Cabin is located, and next to it is an open beach area.
Can we scroll? Yeah, can we scroll over to? So the green along the coast, that is what's called the strip. Okay, and that is deemed the zone R.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly where the strip would sort of start and finish. Yeah, but right now there are three. It's broken up into three different parcels that are zoned R for recreation. Yeah.
Okay, and I think I see Centennial Park there in light blue.
Yes.
So lanes don't seem like lanes themselves, other than Centennial Park. What are they? They are low density?
No, so lanes are rights of way.
Okay.
And so they don't have a parcel number, and they are, yep, they're just designated as rights of way.
Okay.
Yeah. There's sometimes a question of easement. Are some of them easements? Because there are, you know, sometimes you do have easements, but Belvedere is an interesting city in that it has these lanes built into the right-of-way map. Not all cities have that. Tiburon doesn't have that, for example. Mill Valley does have it, and Berkeley does have it, and I'm sure some other cities do. But yeah, it's just interesting quirk of our city. Yeah. So really, this is, yeah, I guess it's, as I said, it's a continuation of the discussion that was started with the onboarding of the new members and, just informal chats with existing members. But it also relates really to the job of this committee and sort of the I guess the areas of its purview. As far as Centennial Park goes, it's very relevant, basically. And I'm not sure if there's anything else that I can add, really.
Just to touch on Centennial Park, we had a discussion about this, a proposal a while back. There's some of the origin of it was that the wooden stairs at the top of it needed to be replaced. And then, it just came up. I said, well, why don't we do one or two other small things? And I had this vision of an embankment slide kind of going down that, very similar to ones that are in San Francisco near Bernal Hill. There's one called the Esmeralda slides and things like that. I made a presentation on that. Tony and I had looked into it with Jenna, the previous chair. We had some conversations with potential providers of these slides, and we learned a lot about what sort of slide would make sense. And I think we did a decent job kind of sussing that out. To me, my perspective was we were going to be looking into whether or not it'd be feasible at all. And if it were feasible, like from a zoning perspective, then probably some community outreach. There was an article in the ARC about it, talking about it, and we kind of said, we're still looking into it. And that's where we've kind of left things. And I haven't really caught up on it in a while.
Yeah, well, and this has been a learning curve, I think, for everybody, myself included, mainly because really that should have been one of the first questions, was whether the zone that park is designated as would allow a structure like that.
Yeah.
So very soon in the process, we could have come to this. We could have seen this issue. As far as feasibility goes, it usually comes down to funding and community, I guess, acceptance or enthusiasm.
Yeah.
I think we started off. To be frank, I think we kind of got ahead of ourselves a little bit and started talking about costs and design when in actual fact one of the most important factors was really whether that property was whether something could be installed on a property like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think my takeaway from this, I'm curious if you have thoughts on this.
No, I'm just curious. I mean, this is great map that I've looked at before. And my question is kind of where, when you look at the residential lots, it's very clear on what their intended uses are and what you can do and not do with them. But if there's a definition of open space, some of our open spaces are very well manicured. At the top of Park Lane, for example, that's stone walls, pathways through it, looks beautiful, but not natural, right? It's maintained and people put effort into it. And then some of our open spaces on West Shore Road are just, you cut stuff down when you need, but otherwise kind of just is there. Do we have guidance on what those mean?
There is some guidance, but generally it's like the top of. If you're talking about the top of Park Lane, there's a circle, like a little traffic circle at the end of the road there. That's a landscaped area. I mean, it's like San Rafael Avenue. The pathway that we have that runs along San Rafael Avenue has clearly been planned and developed as a facility with landscaping and pedestrian ramps and a path. So I guess it's a question of development. It has been developed, and one of the other items on the agenda will be lanes. And there are, for example, several right-of-ways shown on the map that are not developed as lanes. Some of them have, very robust concrete stairs with handrails all the way down. Some of them don't. And then some of them, there's just nothing there. So I guess I don't know if that answers your question, but it's a question of whether something has been kind of actually been built out there. And are you talking about that in terms of zoning or do you just mean?
Yeah,
how-
what constitutes open space versus park? Because our open space, there seems to be a wide variability. You know, if you looked at the field right out here, I'd argue that's open space, but that's a park. And not trying to get cute here, I was just curious if there was
Yeah.
some
No,
guidance saying what constitutes open space versus a park or a public facility.
yes, and so the other item in that, the other links in that agenda are Zone O and Zone R definitions.
Okay, yeah, that's
Um,
what I was looking for.
Yeah, and I can pull them up now, but it's you know, for what it's worth, there's it's not always clear to or easy to read on the screen.
And outside of like rezoning, are there sort of this situation where there's known exceptions that the city lives with?
I don't know. It's a good question. And these are the kind of questions that the planning director and the city attorney probably would be better qualified than me to discuss.
Yeah.
You know, and that's something I'd be happy to facilitate. You know.
Yeah, I think that
at
would
some
be
point.
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, but for now, we do have these attachments to the agenda, which so this is for areas that are in the O zone. So you can see the
Permitted uses. Zero. Seems like I can see and covers the difference between the bottom of West Shore, for example, and the top of Golden Gate. Right? 'Cause the top of Golden Gate would be the public garden paths, uncovered walkways.
yeah. Absolutely, yeah, yeah. I think that's exactly right. I mean, it sort of encompasses wildlife habitat and also public and private gardens paths. Yeah, there's three items there. Yeah.
It's interesting to see the distinction. So there's sort of straight under the fairway permitted uses, and then there's uses permitted with some sort of permit.
Yeah, so there's an outline there of with a use permit from the Planning Commission, parks and beaches and like uses consistent with preservation of natural scenic beauty. Yeah, and the city attorney actually did give his opinion on whether, for example, the slides in Centennial Park would be a permitted use. And his opinion was that no, there would need to be a change in the zoning of Centennial Park.
Tony, I'm picking up a big pause signal on this project. Is that accurate?
Well, I think, yes, there would have to be a pause. As far as design, questions of costs and, you know, fundraising and these kind of things, I think there would have to be because there'd have to be a path forward, I think. And I think until there's a clear path forward with how something like this could happen, there's no point, yeah, sort of discussing costs and so on.
Okay.
Yeah, and happy to again to discuss, you know, outside of a meeting to discuss.
Yeah, that'd be great. I've always viewed this as, we know that there needed to be repairs going on here. To what extent can we repair and make this park, which is, I said it before, completely underutilized, not well known, and has potential to be better utilized and loved. That was the intention of this from the start. Slides were an idea to do that. I'm still interested in perhaps other ways to make Centennial Park more of a memorable experience for people. So, but yeah, I'd love to follow up with you on things like that.
Yeah.
I just want to
mentioned points of order. I look at these agendas, I don't see Centennial Park on here. So it's a pretty detailed discussion, none of the neighbors have noticed. My understanding is we're way outside. Probably.
Thank you for bringing that up.
A bad place. So this is it's a great discussion.
Yeah,
But it needs to be legitimized, so I think there's a place to put it on the next one.
perfect.
So we get noticed and bring this in for a formal discussion.
Yeah.
And put everything on the table, so we don't have to shoehorn it under subsection.
I think that's great. Yeah. It had
Yep.
been formally on the last two agendas. I think that's why I was wondering when was appropriate to talk about it here, but I think your point is very well met.
It's a good discussion. It's like
Yeah.
Yep.
formal.
Yep, thank you for bringing that up, committee member Stacy.
Okay. Does anyone else have comments on the zoning map and regulation sub-bullet from the committee? Great. Anyone from the public?
There's no public comment.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to discussion on lanes. Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Yep, please.
I'm
Oh, great.
and we are not in favor of the slide.
Okay.
For quite a few reasons. There just isn't maintenance done on the lanes or that park as it is. Historically, the last owners have been the ones who've paid their gardeners to maintain it. We literally have all the irrigation running from our house into that park. And the last owners were watering different garden areas of that park. There's just a ton of maintenance issues. You brought forth one, certainly the stairs up at the top need to be fixed. We have a plum tree that overhangs multiple places on the walkway that drop all the plums. That's just constantly a mess that doesn't get cleaned up on a regular basis. So I think having, purchased a house here in 2018 on the island, and I walk almost every day on all the lanes, I just really would like funds to go towards maintaining what we have. And that was given Centennial Park as just a quiet, reflective, open space place. It's not a big park at all. It has a very small flat space where there's a bench now that occasionally people will sit on. I would love to have it more beautiful. I would love to be part of volunteering and gardening in that and putting plants in and things, but to go from no maintenance to crowdsourcing or funding a slide in a space that children just don't walk on the lanes. They're super steep and there's a good reason they don't do it. I think it'll get used mainly at night on the weekends by kids, teenagers. And I know the neighbors on the other side also, oppose the slide. And when we start talking about rezoning, you are affecting our values of our properties. It really is changing the use of those spaces. So we just are here, we're cautious. We weren't notified, as you mentioned, none of the neighbors were. I talked to some other neighbors down the street. They didn't know about it. And parking's always a huge issue, especially on Bella Vista, Bayview Beach. I mean, when you have someone coming to your house to work on your house, they have to park really far away.
Or you have to move your car really far away. So they
Yeah.
can actually park.
Yeah, so I think that we're concerned, the Bernal slide it's a destination, right? Like people go to that. I don't think that's what we want on Belvedere Island. I think we need to maintain what we have. What has been given to the city needs to be maintained. That's part of taking a donation, is actually maintaining it and keeping it beautiful. And I think there are many people in the community that would love to assist in that, but I can't understand the jump from not maintaining to getting all this funding and money putting towards a slide. So.
Thank you.
Thank you for the comment. And to come back to committee member Stacy's point, Centennial Park wasn't actually agendized as a topic in itself. It sounds like the zoning discussion has ended up focusing on very sharply on that one location. But I think if to let the neighbors know, as well as anybody else in the public, if Centennial Park is ever agendized, that will be it will be agendized as an item on of discussion at this meeting, with all the notifications that the city puts out for its meetings. But that it is not the topic. It was not the intended topic of this agenda. So yeah, that's it. Thank you for your comment and input. And I'll let the chair see
Thank you.
if there's anything else on that item.
Yeah, I wanted to see if the committee had any comments related to the public comment that they wanted to. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that feedback. It totally makes sense. I think I would just like to reiterate what I said before. As joining this committee, I think the order of operations for a lot of ideas, I think we're not super clear in terms of when's the right time to do community reach out versus ideating type phases. I certainly have, I think personally would love to chat with you and just share my perspective outside of this. And I think keeping Belvedere beautiful and maintaining it as an amazing place and maintaining that gift was always the intention of this project. And I just want to say thank you again for your comment. Okay.
And just to add quickly, though, I see in the chat on Zoom, there was a comment from Nick Rathjen. I hope I pronounced that correctly. He says, "My name is Nick Rathjen and live next door to Centennial Park. I second everything Kelly said." So thank you for that comment.
Okay, great. With that, love to move to discussion on lanes, number 8.
All right, thank you, Chair.
Yep.
The main updates on that is that Park Lane, we've been provided with a quote. Park Lane for the new members has been discussed for the last couple of years because the bottom section of Park Lane is also made of wood. It's one of the lanes with a wooden section. And there is a design that's been approved by this committee as well as by the Planning Commission to be built. It's a curved stairway with a new platform and bench that would be added in place of the wooden steps. We've been going through various phases of design and geotechnical review, and we now have a almost final structural design, but enough of a design in that we can ask for a quote from a company. And so we have a quote from Van Middy, who's a contractor, a city contractor that does concrete work for the city. And the amount that they've given us is $103,000. So in the context of our projects, there is some funding that's been allocated. This has been through the CIP budget kind of process a couple of times. There's some rollover funding from previous years. And there's been some funding some grant funding that's been reallocated from a project that didn't come to fruition. So the city has available right now approximately $75,000 for that project. Future sources of funding are available. The Belvedere Community Foundation, as I think has been mentioned before, and we've approached before, is one possible source of funding that I think we could apply for, and I think it would be a very good opportunity to get some additional funding there. So really the update is that's where we are. I believe the next funding deadline for the Belvedere Community Foundation is October the 1st, and so or maybe the 31st, I can't remember. But the next step for us as staff is to make an application based on this quote that we have, and hopefully secure a grant for a ballpark amount of what we can, expect to spend on the project. And I hope at the next meeting to be able to give you some good news that we have a final plan and that we have we've received 3 quotes and we can choose the lowest bidder. So that's the main thing on Park Lane. The other thing is really just an introduction to the wording for the rest of that item, which is possible formation of a lanes subcommittee to develop an official lanes map. And that's something that I think would be very useful. There are a couple of different lanes maps floating around. Some of them show lanes where there just clearly none exist. And it would be great, I think, as really from a committee perspective, to be able to produce an official map that we can give out to visitors at City Hall and at events. And I think some other organizations hand out this kind of thing, so we can provide it. It's an opportunity to kind of dig into the lanes, see where we can, where we can improve, and yeah, really just for the committee to get a picture of what our lanes look like, and yeah, go from there.
Yeah, go ahead.
Would that require the city attorney to help with some of the boundaries, some of the issues on the lanes that show up on the map, that like private houses now?
Possibly. Right. And so I guess a surveyor would be, in some cases, the first person. Hopefully, we wouldn't have to get to a point where we're wanting to reclaim, city property. But yet, I mean, it's a very good question, because there are places where, you look on the map that there's a lane and there's just a fence, somebody's fence that goes on for another 100 feet from there. But yeah, getting a better understanding of those, of these properties, I think would be a great project for a subcommittee. And, with the idea of maybe putting together a list of prioritized projects for the lanes. There was one in the last report, and that's the next item on the agenda. The last committee report to City Council had a list of lanes projects, and we've really worked through, in the last couple of years, we've worked through most of the repairs out there. So yeah, I think, kind of digging into the lanes and finding out where possible issues are and looking at the bigger picture of a map might be a good way to go.
So it seems to be there has to be two maps. One for public use, or if I'm gonna go hike the lanes that I don't get by myself in the kitchen. And the other one that requires a surveyor to clean up and figure out what's happening in the city with boundaries that the average person doesn't really care about if they're trying to figure out what's happening. Frustrating.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So, and I think that's really what it is. It's a visitor's map to the city in a way.
The walking map.
Right, or a walk. Yeah, exactly. Right. And there may be, and I guess the question of a surveyor is really if there's any, any areas that we're not sure of. But I think for a visitor's map, it should be plain. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Marika?
I would agree, because that was going to be my exact question. So, which was the fact that I think those are two really different use cases. And I think part of the confusion about this is that there are like 4 maps, even within the city's own purview. The map that is in the general plan is different than the map that is shown as the visitor's map, is different than what is on the map you can buy for Belvedere Landmarks Society.
Yeah.
Walking map, and it's different than the one that sometimes is on the table outside of the post office. So those are 4 maps that I can identify.
So let's make a 5th. This is a very yeah.
Well, I would say one, I think the idea of a visitor's map, back to Charlie's earlier discussion about being at events, would be awesome, and that to have one that is consistent across sort of all platforms that we make available is one. But I also really second your comment about having a second map, and I think the agenda item sort of seemed to me to address just an official lanes map, but I think having one that contributes to being able to prioritize, for the report, prioritize what is, helps and is working with all of the city people with the maintenance team, I mean, they always, Ellie brought up a very good point, which is, there's always questions about what we're maintaining, what we need to do, and I think having a subcommittee that does both, here's public one of what's actually currently available, and here's also an assessment of the various lanes and their condition that we then use for prioritization and also consistent with some of the stuff that I read in the general plan, which is the very first item was protecting city's property. Recognize and protecting, meaning even if it's not currently used as a lane, it is identified as something that is city easement, and that then the city can decide now or later. And I looking at some of the stuff even in the general plan, it says something about, oh, there was a assessment done in 1992, and I saw something, oh, there was one done in 1986. So I don't know when the most recent one was done, but I think having something like that to bring us up to where we are would be very valuable for the city, as well as this community. So sorry,
Great.
2 bits to add on to the 2 now.
Yep, I agree. And I know Jane Cooper, who I worked with in sort of putting this agenda together, because we didn't have a chair. I think her thinking is exactly what you guys are talking about. I think just having a better working knowledge of our city's lanes, and being able to provide good information to the public. And neighbors and anybody who lives in the city, but the idea of a subcommittee is something that I think is a good way to go with this, because something I didn't realize is that a subcommittee until recently with your guys's kind of onboarding stuff, a subcommittee doesn't have to only be members of in this case the Parks Committee. Any members of the public can volunteer to be on a subcommittee. It can be any size. So if there are any interested members of the public that can be brought into a committee, you can have a subcommittee full of volunteers who are interested in taking part in something like this, developing a new map and list of priorities for the lanes.
And how would the public be notified of the formation?
Well, that would be
Now.
word of mouth. It is right now in a meeting that a subcommittee has been formed, and subcommittee does not have to notice public meetings. Its meetings. They can meet, and typically with this city, with Belvedere, a lot of work gets done by subcommittees. Actually, the city got a new website last year, and that was really a lot of hard work from a subcommittee that put their personal time into it. So yeah, it's actually a good way to get big projects done is with the help of a group of volunteers and some direction, I guess.
Well, I think it sounds really exciting. I had mentioned to Tony, maybe in a previous meeting too, I think a digital version could be pretty neat. I'm not sure the software used to make these sort of maps. The current ones seem, I don't know if we still want to use that, but there's ways I think you can layer it onto Google. So imagine going to the City of Belvedere website and then getting a map in Google that as you walk around, it can tell you you're nearby a lane or one of these parks. I think that would be neat. And then I also was at the Mill Valley Library recently, and they had this amazing map of Mill Valley lanes with this like sort of beautiful tri-folded thing that I paid $5 for. And I meant to bring it, but I couldn't find it. So I have to buy another one. And maybe that's their plan. But yeah, I think you have one. Okay.
And by the way, you can buy one from the Belvedere Timber Landmarks.
Yeah.
It has a very lovely one as well.
Okay. Well, would anyone like to join, or maybe we should make a motion to, perfect, form the subcommittee as the first, or should we see if folks are interested? Okay.
Do you think public comment should be, see if there's public comment before taking a motion? It's probably a good idea.
Yeah,
to-
I'd like,
to do
is
that,
there any
yeah.
public comment on the notion of a public subcommittee to make a lanes map? A walking lanes map
None, I have none online.
from the room?
So I think in that case, then, yep, discussing a motion is, yep, a good idea.
Okay. Do you think we should discuss interest in being a member for, I guess we could discuss forming the. Yeah, are there any motions to form a subcommittee related to this lanes?
I would make a motion to form a subcommittee. I'd like to form a motion to have one that would look at both creating a walking map as well as helping identify the city more, if you want to call it operational map or whatever that would be used for prioritizing city work and identifying city property. So those, I would.
Would that be exclusive to the lanes or would it? And I'll,
It would be relative to the links. And so
Okay.
It would sort of, I feel like based on even what's on, we have on now, the walking lanes are a subset of all of the ones that are listed, that include the ones that you mentioned that may not currently be used. And so we would want to be addressing both, but the production would be twofold.
A walking map and a working map.
There you go. Oh, I love the alliteration.
okay,
So that I would propose that we create a subcommittee to create a walking and a working lanes map.
fantastic. Is there a second for the motion? Okay, great. All in favor? Aye, excellent. Love to discuss if anyone would like to join this committee join that subcommittee from this committee. Okay, Marika, great. Excellent. Would anyone else to join? I would love to join. I have some research I've already done and love to follow up with you on that. Okay, perfect.
Great. So
Okay,
yeah, so I think as chair, you can appoint the two members to the committee. I'm not 100% certain, but I
join.
don't think a motion's needed.
Okay.
If you'd like to have a motion.
Okay.
No,
yeah,
Mm-mm.
sorry, you don't need a motion to name the
Name
committee
members.
members.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have one follow-on procedural question, which is, I think it would be great, to have some members of the public participate.
absolutely.
And I think to have an effective committee, you have to have, can't have it be too big, like you have to have a plan. So I don't know how that works.
Hmm.
Meaning when you set up the committee, because you don't want to be in a position where you are suddenly saying, oh, no, we're full if we have this. So I don't know, I just wanted to bring that up. About how you would manage that. That's what you do now, because you want that to be publicly, it's agendized, and we're going to talk about making a lanes committee. And so is it like, well, ideally we want it to be a committee of 5 people and we will then go forward and find that. So I'm just wondering about the
Yeah.
structure element.
Maybe a meeting, a first meeting, could could be had, and I'd be happy to join you to discuss sort of scope and strategy.
Perfect.
Okay.
That'll be our follow-up.
That's what I'm
Yeah, that's a great question.
clear on.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay, any other public comments? I think I asked that already for this one. I did, okay. On to number 9, discussion of our report to City Council.
Right.
Thank you,
So
Tony.
yeah, thank you, Chair. This is really in the agenda because I think something that's been overlooked a little bit since I've been here is the fact that that's really this committee's most prominent communication to City Council. It's a formal report that's presented to City Council, and I think, seeing as there are 4 meetings per year, and up until now, a report was delivered to City Council twice a year. in discussing with the city manager, city council's agenda, there's a very good probability that that'll be reduced to once a year. So instead of providing an update and a list of priorities, there'll be a list of priorities with updates on previous priorities at the same meeting. The timing of a report would be probably in January, which is when the last one was delivered, because that is the start of the budgeting sort of process. So the idea is really for the Parks Committee to be able to get in and talk to City Council right before the budgeting process starts with a list of its priorities. So with 4 meetings per year, it seems like in the past, without it being agendized at every meeting, the report has pretty much stayed the same. The template has stayed the same over the years, which is fine, but quite a lot has happened in the last few years. And it seems like if there was a chance at every meeting to refine what's in the report, then by the time January comes around, it's hopefully more focused and representative of what the committee would like to prioritize. The other thing is that I think it serves to focus the committee's discussions, really. If that's the one report that can be made to City Council every year, everything else that's discussed in meetings, should be connected to that report and what's going to be delivered to City Council, if that makes sense. Yeah. So even though the next time this report goes to City Council is in January, there's only one more regular meeting before then. And that's, in December. So that meeting really should be finalizing the report for the January presentation. So that's a suggestion on my part. Really, the chair is the person who delivers the report.
Yep.
So my suggestion is for it to be on the agenda at every meeting, so that items in the report can be discussed through the year.
I think that is a great suggestion. I think this being more of a living document and maybe reformatting it. I remember it's it hasn't changed in a while. It's verbose. Maybe we could tighten it and be a little bit more clear. I've heard also from City Council members that being a little bit more crystal clear about what specifically this committee is asking for. I've even heard them say, just tell us one thing. I know maybe that's too far, but I think we could do that. I think that's a great suggestion. I'd love to hear opinions on that, sort of talking about it every time, but I also am concerned about just the timeline between then and now. I can certainly work with you, Tony, to begin preparing it, but if we only have one meeting to turn feedback from the rest of the committee, I am a little bit concerned about timing.
And maybe that's why it's the template has stayed the same between presentations.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, basically the idea is for us, for the committee to be thinking about it at each meeting. And really, I think some of the feedback from City Council on the last go around was, as you say, I mean, maybe not one item, but they don't need to see every repair that's been identified to be, to be performed on every lane shown in the report with a new list every year. It's really just and the thought behind it is that it's with the budget in mind. So if the committee would like to have some funding available to do surveys on the lanes, then that would be part of the report, and that comes from discussions in meetings and updates from the subcommittee on lanes, for example. So the idea here is really just to make the report available to all the committee members, with the knowledge that at the next meeting it will be discussed as a draft for presentation in January.
Okay. Any thoughts or comments from the committee?
change the whole thing between now and December, and maybe part of having a new group is like this, for this year, you get done what you need to get done in some way.
Mm.
But maybe that's more of a goal for next year. I mean, other than, unless you want to take it along.
Yeah.
It sounds like a lot. But I would say, one of the things, I know I was going back and forth from that report to the, capital projects funding, piece that you went in. So I feel like having a report that sort of combines and has like nice, this has a graphic that you can attach, so something like that.
Yep.
And, maybe not for this year, but maybe that's something for next year. So where you have a list of also then have some sort of, specific budget attached to it.
Yeah.
It's on the agenda here.
Yeah. That makes sense. Wayne, any? Okay.
That's it. That was part of it. So I was looking at this and then trying to combine it with the report. And so that's what, I think that would be really, that's what I believe.
Yep, exactly. And that's, Jane Cooper felt that this would be very useful in writing the report, to just have an idea of what the budget looks like right now. Just, I guess, a picture of how the budgeting works in the city. So there are two, in the operations of the city, there are two main budgets. There's the operating budget, which is the day-to-day expenses, for routine maintenance and small projects. And then there's the capital fund. And that's where the bigger projects happen, basically. And that's where most of the change happens year to year. The operating budget changes very slightly. So the operating budget, as far as parks goes, that includes, we have a landscape contractor, that we have an annual budget for. We have a budget for tree work. We have, things like materials for irrigation maintenance and that kind of thing. So that's the operating budget. The CIP fund, the capital improvement fund, is focused on, in the last few years has been focused on lanes, as you can see, and then other projects. So community park, playground renovation, that has been completed, but there is a little bit of funding left in there. So that's shown in this summary here. There's some money for some fresh mulch on the seawall on Centerville Avenue. So it's that kind of thing. So it's some of it is arguably quite routine, but it's really, the idea is that it's slightly bigger projects. And this is where the committee's input, this is what the council is looking for input on. They can go ahead and approve, anything that gets put in front of them, but they would like to know what they're approving. And if there has been requests made by the committee and they're able to approve those requests, I think that's what they're hoping for, really. In the past, I think some of the gist of the report has been that, the committee would like to see more happening in the lanes, and that more funding would be great, basically, which is true. But I think the response from council has been, we don't have enough money for everything that we need. So if you guys are able to give us some good options to spend money on and show that there's other funding sources, then we can work with you on that. It's I guess so. So this is an outline of how that goes. Council, and talking about the actual budgeting process, there are the Administrative Services Director, Helga Cotter, puts the budget together and works with the Finance Committee on the details of that. That then comes to City Council. But the input into the budgeting process comes from staff, especially for the operating budget, and any needed infrastructure upgrades, for example. and council. So if council has any requests, they'll ask staff to include those in the budget through the mayor or through council members, and then Helga works with the finance committee to move it forward.
Tony, could you talk about Prop 68 grant?
Yeah, so that I believe was a one-off grant. No, sorry, I can't talk about it because I don't have enough information. There are a few different grants that come through. TAM, which is Transportation Authority of Marin, every year actually provides grants through from gas tax and other measures that have passed. But I don't know what Proposition 68 is off the top of my head.
Because
Helga would be the person. Yeah.
I was going to bring this up in new business, but I had heard, as it relates to this, there was some grant that has some expiration. And I'm wondering if this is that item. And then that could be something for this committee to have an opinion on how that may or may not need to be used.
There is a state grant, and I apologize for not knowing the name and the details of it, that the city has applied for and has been allocated funding for. It's approximately $170,000. It's a per capita grant, and the funding, the allocations for that grant were for community playground and for Beach Road, for the seawall project. It originally envisioned a park-like area along Beach Road where the new seawall would be. We've recently found out that seawall project wouldn't qualify for that grant because that would be seen as more of a transportation corridor than as a recreation facility. And so the other side of the seawall project is San Rafael Avenue, and that stretch of land over there with the DG pathway and the landscaping, that would be seen as a recreation facility. So the funding right now has been, we've asked if it can be moved over to that portion of the project. The community playground portion of the project was actually not, we didn't claim that reimbursement. So the funding for that was available for allocation, but that's also been allocated to the seawall landscape and pathway upgrades after the installation of the seawall. I know I hope it's not going off topic here too much, but it does expire in 2027, and we don't know if FEMA funding will become available for that project by 2027, for it to be completed by 2027, for that funding to be available for the park on there.
This is the 110% state grant.
Yes. Yes.
I heard 170.
170.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
And why I think this is on topic, because I think if there was an opportunity to recommend how that might be used, that feels like it's within the purview of that report.
It would be, except that it has already been allocated.
Okay.
But I can let you know that this has been this week and last week that the state came to us, to staff, to say that the Beach Road project would not be reimbursed. And they needed, by the end of this month, a new location for this money. So moving it to San Rafael Avenue is what has been done. However, the expectation is that the FEMA funding, even if it came through tomorrow, that project would not be complete in 2027. So that money may need to be reallocated to a different project at some point in the next few years. And at that point, the Parks Committee would absolutely be the committee to decide where that funding would go.
Okay. And should that take, or that opinion or suggestion, be part of the report for 2025?
That's a good question. I don't think so. But I think if there was I think it would be dependent on whether there was a project identified for that. If there was, I think if there was a project that that the committee would like to bring to the attention of City Council, they could mention that there was this funding that may be available in the future. But I think it's just not concrete enough to be of any use, basically.
I bring it up because I believe this report in the past, in years past, had said a top priority, there was like a 5-year lanes project that was going on. And one of those top projects was building a staircase on Artist View, one of that open spaces. And I wonder if would that qualify for that 170? If that were a
There
project?
there are restrictions on it, and there are portions of it. We just among staff with Robert and Helga and I, we've discussed, what kind of projects this would even be available to. The issue with Artist View, as it currently stands, is that it needs to have ADA access, and if there's going to be a new stairway down to the water, that would be an issue. There has been talk with, of possibly splitting that project into different phases, and maybe phase 1 would include a platform, a viewing platform at street level, which would have ADA access, and so that could be a possible use of that funding. But because that funding, for the time being, it's not allocated to that. I think including it as in the report is a good idea, but I think identifying that as a funding source would not be, I don't think it would be useful.
So is the requirement that the money has to be spent by 2027, or how, because I'm just thinking about city bureaucracy decisions and things that, you don't want to wait until 2026 and then, try to push a project through at that price point. So I'm just wondering.
Yep, good question. I am not sure. I think it would have to have been spent by then, and it's a reimbursement. So the city would have to put up the money in the first place for a project, and for the project to have been completed by then. Yeah. Yeah. Right. So so it could be reimbursed after 2027, but the project itself has to have been completed by then. Yeah. And I don't know about whether there's, any possibility of an extension, but my understanding is that 2027 is that's the end of the period. Yeah.
Okay. Of course.
Yeah.
We're in
Yeah.
item 9. Yeah.
We're just on item 9.
Yeah, and this budget on the screen is really just as part of the report.
So I guess I have a question about what Prop 68 was, because that's literally the single largest financial piece on that. So it seems to me that it would be important for us to understand what that's for, and be considering it as part of our decision.
Yeah.
That was why I had it there. I also thought, yes.
Yeah, thank you. And if you'll give me a minute, I'm going to see if I can maybe get a response to that, because Helga might be able to let us know right now.
Just one other question, and it just was, and this probably I could have found it, but I didn't. What is the fiscal year? Like what month does it start? So you're saying that the budget is, we make recommendation in January, then they're doing it, and so when it says estimated rollover, when does the next budget year start?
So the fiscal budget year runs from July 1st through June 30th.
Are we in fiscal year 24 now?
Yes.
Fiscal year 25?
We're in
Starts
20.
July 1 of 2025.
So it's actually it's known as 24-25. So we're in the fiscal year 24-25. Also in here it's shown as 25. So fiscal year 2025.
But are we estimated rollover? Are we estimating the rollover will happen in July of 2025? And that then the
No.
revised budget is,
Okay, right, yeah. So, so to be clear, we're in fiscal year 2025. The rollover is unspent funds from yes, exactly. Right, yeah.
We are, as of July 1st, we are in FY.
The third column.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
That's what I wanted. That was.
And Tony, do we have, if we were not to make this report, what would the column to the right of the third column look like right now? Do we have that yet?
So, so that would be fiscal year 25-26.
Which is what we're supposed to be recommending towards?
Yes,
Yeah.
and no, we don't have the city, we do have a budget for a 5-year budget forecast, which is very broad. So there would be a column there. And I can provide that, absolutely. But yeah, there is no sort of estimated budget for next year right now.
Okay. I think it's a great question about things like Prop 68, because did that happen? Does that carry forward to next year, et cetera? So.
And then and that was what I was trying to understand, is that our report is really going to be for what, looking to how, what FY 26.
Yeah.
looks like.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a really good question, and I apologize that I don't have an answer right away.
Well, once we're looking
yeah.
at it every meeting, I think we'll all be more comfortable with it.
In looking at the report.
And Marika, is your mic on? You tap the push button. Yeah.
Sorry about that. The other question I had on this budget here was that in the report there, we had a bunch of items for around tree and vegetation management. And that isn't really listed here. Is that just because it's not considered a capital project and funding source? And so that's
correct. Yeah.
But
so that's in the operating budget. And for this year, we have actually for both of them, both vegetation management and tree work, it's $75,000 per year for the fiscal year.
okay.
Yeah.
And that's just, okay.
Yeah. And that's basically, it's part of the maintenance budget.
And then the other piece that I saw in the report was there was a part on public views and enforcement of code, whatever, code
Yes.
Restrictions. And so I was wondering, is that also obviously probably part of the operating budget? And is that something that has money to it? Again, I was
No,
trying to
right.
combine these two documents. So
Yes, and so that's a good question relating to the report. I think the idea for including that in the report was that there was the committee wanted to bring to council attention that the city has view easements on West Shore where on people's properties they have to keep their vegetation below a certain height so that there's a view of the water from the street. And that those rules weren't always being adhered to. The problem with the city is that there's no clear enforcement mechanism for those easements. So I think that if I remember correctly, the recommendation was for some kind of code enforcement officer or some ability for the city to be able to enforce those view easements on West Shore.
okay, so I just was trying to understand what was our purview and what was in the report. So thank you.
Yeah, and that's in the general plan, the parks section of the general plan. The view easements are included in there. Yeah, as a sort of a park, a feature that falls under parks, in the city. Yeah.
Okay, do we want to wait to talk about Prop 68 if you can find it, or should we move on, Tony?
Well, I think so. I'm I don't know if I'm going to get a response now, but I can absolutely have a response at the next meeting. I imagine that the funding's either been allocated to projects that have been identified, because this doesn't show where general fund and it's the breakdown of where the money is coming from isn't that clear in this. So we see that the Prop 68 grant funds are there, but we don't see what they've been allocated to.
Yeah.
So if they haven't been allocated, then they will be available in the next fiscal year. Yeah.
Okay. Any other comment from the committee on these items? I think I got some homework, Tony, to go through this and start preparing it, and I'll work with you, and we'll certainly have a draft for the next time we meet.
Great. Yeah,
Okay.
sounds good.
Okay,
Yep.
nice. Any public comment on this item, Christina?
No public comment on this item.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to 10, discussion of the community park owl box location.
Yes.
Okay.
So this also has been discussed at the last couple of meetings, and we have a consultant who works with the city, a wildlife consultant, who found a couple of locations. I think the last time she came, for the new members, she came to a meeting a couple of meetings ago and discussed the possibility of owl boxes in Belvedere. The benefits, there would be a couple of possible benefits apart from reducing the rodent population. Reducing the rodent population would have a couple of offshoots, one of which may be reduction in the number of coyotes in the city. But she was hesitant to say where a good location might be. Since then, she actually emailed me that she had, in her travels around the city, had seen and heard owls here around City Hall. And so she sent over a couple of proposed locations at City Hall that she thought would be good spots for an owl box. So I wanted to bring this to you, and we can discuss where an owl box could go. And if you give me a minute, I'll pull it up on the screen. All right, so fairly straightforward. 3 possible locations. I can give you my thoughts. The far right location to me is very close to the road, and is right next to the historical pear tree. So it doesn't seem like a good spot to me. The 2 spots further to the left would be better. And I would think that between those, the one that's closer to San Rafael Avenue would be preferable, because it's sort of a little bit further away from traffic on the pathways.
And Tony, what would these look like? I know she gave the mock-up, but would these require a new pole be installed or something
Yes,
like that?
so there would be a pole, I believe 12-foot high pole with a wooden box on the top, about I think it's about 32 inches by by 18 inches or something like that, wooden. Yeah.
So my takeaway from her presentation was that we could put an owl box up, but it wasn't really feasible. It wouldn't achieve the ends. She came back subsequently and said, hey, actually, I thought about this more, looked at the geography and revised my preliminary assessment.
Yes, exactly. So she didn't, and I'm trying to remember what she said in the meeting because I also discussed it with her. Yeah, but basically she didn't think that there were many locations in the city that would be suitable for an owl box, that they're quite fussy basically about where they nest. And it's not always easy to find a good spot. But I think she was quite excited about hearing an owl and it was a barn owl apparently, and those are good owls for owl boxes. So yeah, having heard one at City Hall, she said, you know, it's probably worth a shot, and at City Hall, these would be the best places for it to go. Yeah. And again, it isn't guaranteed that that it would be successful. Yeah, but you know, that it would just be worth a shot, really. And that's the operating budget would be enough to cover the cost of that. So yeah.
Any thoughts from the committee?
Yes.
Please.
Well, the fact, I had a question about how high it was, and you just said it's 12 feet high. So I was actually really surprised that they were so close to the road. And at 12 feet high, I would think, I don't know how tall those trees are that are there between the road, right there between the road and, you know, the park, basically, you know, that, and I don't know if they're 12 feet. So I was thinking, especially around where the pear tree is, where I know there's not a 12-foot tree there. I was picturing having this tall box on a post that's visible that now, that now, whatever, the kids throw rocks at it from the park because it's now I don't know, you know, all sorts of things that it seemed in a very visible spot. And if I were an owl, and I'm not an owl expert, nor am I an owl, I would not feel very secure. That was my question, especially now that you said it's 12 feet tall, and I don't think that those trees there would probably completely shield it, but I could be wrong. So that was just my one question about it, because I don't want to create what in the legal purview is an attractive nuisance, where now you have people throwing rocks at a box that are now going into the road. I don't know, there's all sorts of things, and also not really achieving our goal, which is creating a welcoming spot for an owl. And we have, by the way, she can come down to San Rafael Ave because we hear owls almost every night. So
I think those are great horned owls.
Yeah, they might be, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, but anyway, so that was just my one question about how close they were to the road and what we were putting up.
Yeah, good question. That did cross my mind as well, because we do have people who throw things at things. And I think that's the slope there. So the road, you know, there's a slope that comes down off the road. So I think the height question, I think it would be below the tree level as far as height goes, but I don't think it would be. I think it would, somebody who's got a rock and wants to throw it at something, I think would be able to, yeah, they'd be able to throw it. But maybe that would be no matter where it's located, people who want to throw rocks at owl boxes.
Yeah, but this is pretty close to the path. I guess that was my thought, that this is kind of in the
Quite
very
populated.
public, it's in a populated area.
Yeah.
I mean, if it's in the, I don't know, if it doesn't, again, I'm not an owl and an owl expert, but you know, there's other trees around the outside edge, for example, you know, that are tall and maybe they wouldn't like that tree, but that was my question. And I think that's a question for around maintenance and safety as well as attractiveness for this investment.
I can ask her that question and get back to you with her response. Yeah.
And I think also the one other question would be, if it's a box on a stick, then it's also, you know, you had the comment before about the view of the people across the street looking at the park. And so I just would bring that up too.
There was just an article in the ARC about a young woman who installed a bunch of these, I think in Tiburon. So I'd be curious if we want to continue this investigation, if we do, to see how that's going. Maybe check in 2 meetings from now, see are owls taking in those boxes? Has it helped with rodents? And then maybe if it has, revisit this.
Yeah, that's a great thought. We can absolutely do that. I think there is a sort of a window or sort of a time that you want to have it installed by. So, and I think it's about fall. So if we wanted to install one, we'd have to do it now. So if you wanted to wait, we can certainly do that. We can get a little bit more detail on these locations
Do we,
and
do we feel otherwise? Do you feel like this is the time to strike?
For the new committee members, I think most of the boxes are painted white for thermal purposes too. And so I'm, questioning if this area is appropriate. We're all saying we're not the owl experts. Well, the owl expert put the X's on the box. So I think she at least thinks owls would nest there, but that's not the determinative factor, right? I think the aesthetics and how the community would react to it are important as well. I don't know how the community would react to having a big, they're pretty hefty.
I think I imagined it like on City Hall, like on the roof. or
Like
something.
versus a separate.
Versus a
big pole
standalone
thing, yeah.
stick with a box on it, for sure.
And I think if I recall, if the driving factor is getting owls and wildlife, great. If the driving factor is to reduce a rodent population, I think she still said most of the hunting would happen not in Belvedere.
Yeah.
They need open areas like the hills around St. Hilary's, et cetera. So I think we should take that into account. I don't think we should nix it, but I think maybe, see how, I think it was a Girl Scouts project.
Yeah.
See how that's going. If she's documented things,
Would you like the motion to table this for
sure.
6 months? Okay,
Let's table it.
okay. Are there a second to do that? Second. Okay, all in favor of tabling this for 6 months and checking in with the Tiburon project? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, thank you, Tony.
all right.
Any
thank you.
public comment on the owl box?
I have no public comment on the owl box.
Perfect. So now we're in new business. There's one item in new business, and Tony, correct me, this is also an opportunity for council members to propose new business for the next meeting during this section? Or is that future items? Okay.
Yep,
sorry.
that'll be future items.
I
Yeah,
jumped ahead.
exactly.
Okay, so let's talk about new business. So we've got the calendar for the rest of the year and 2025.
And I will bring that up.
So I have, I know I have a conflict the week of March 13th. So I'm just wondering, are these scheduled or are these possible to be moved a week before, a week after?
Tony, can you speak as to the parameters we're required to schedule in really quick? So the new committee members understand.
Sorry, could you repeat that?
The parameters by with which we can schedule, I think it
Yeah.
is a certain week in certain months.
Okay,
And then there is some flexibility, but I think there are
Yeah,
some parameters, because I know we've talked about loosening those parameters for people
Yes,
scheduled
and
previously.
I should really have introduced that, where it started with that. Basically, the proposed dates are not within the parameters of the charter and how that works. We would like to change the charter to have a different set of meeting dates and make it more flexible, basically, because right now the charter says that the regular meetings must take place in the third week of each fiscal of each quarter of the fiscal year, which is, I mean, it's pretty inflexible. The dates that I put down on this draft schedule are really to try and, for two things: work around the summer break so that we don't have any meetings right in the middle of summer, and then also for the council report, presentation of the council report, have a meeting before then, and try and keep them at fairly regular intervals between, every 3 months still. But this, I think, is every second Thursday of the month. And I'm going to pull that up in a second.
Tony, I know for sure that I will be gone December 12th.
so your key.
The next meeting.
Your key meeting when you're presenting your report?
Yes, exactly. Good luck. I could do the week earlier, but.
Well, and now that you're saying, so my point was, I know for sure that the week of March 13th, I am gone. So maybe we could move those two meetings to the week earlier in the month. So the third week of the month, the second week of the month.
Yeah. There's a council, there are council meetings, and this is kind of works around those a little bit, but I could certainly incorporate those into a new draft that we can, if we can set a date for the next meeting coming up right now, then we can have a calendar then that it incorporates those changes.
Yeah, I would love anything prior to December 10th. Okay.
Unless we do it late.
Yep.
So if anybody wants to start with the
I'm game, but yeah.
The ninth,
Let's see.
I clearly.
December 9th?
I'm the least popular person on this panel.
Is that-
Just let me know when.
So Nick, you're free
city-
whenever? Okay.
So there's a city council meeting on the 9th. So
Okay.
yep, this room will be taken for that.
Okay. 4th, 3rd, or 2nd?
third, fourth, second.
Okay.
I'm only popular 2 days.
Second, third, or fourth of December.
Yeah.
Those all work for me.
4th is probably a Wednesday,
Yes.
midweek
Yeah.
might be a good way to go.
Okay.
Okay, so we will say December the 4th. And does this time, 4 p.m. Work for everybody?
Yes.
Okay, great. So we will set the next meeting for the 4th, December the 4th, and we'll have a final calendar by then. So the other dates for 2025, are there any, did somebody say there was a
Yeah,
date there?
the week of March, that whole week, that's March 13th. So I'm okay the week before, the week after. My thought was that the week before might be better because it's even farther away from, I think, what would be people's like school, spring holidays and things. I mean, Easter is later is later. So but the farther away you get, that was why I thought maybe the first week, but I could do any of them. It's
Okay,
just that week.
yeah, okay.
Yeah, I can do March 6th if we have to.
March 6th. Yeah, I could certainly change it to March 6th.
Looks like we have a comment from the community.
The committee member, John, commented that these dates work for him.
Great.
So it may be if, not everybody has to be available for every single meeting. That's the other thing. So maybe what I'll do is I'll check in. Is March 13th, does that work for other members?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. All right, so okay, so we won't approve this meeting schedule, but maybe I'll just confirm that March date with individuals, and we can bring it back to the committee at the next meeting.
Thank you, Tony.
Meeting of December 4th.
Excellent. Okay, public comment on this meeting schedule? Christina?
I have no further public comment.
Thank you. All right, let's move into our future items. Suggestion of possible items to be placed on agenda of upcoming meetings. I'll start with the committee. Does anyone have any topics that they'd like to suggest for future meetings? Nick?
Charlie, do you?
I got one. Former council member Jim Lynch put me in touch with a young student who is working on a project that reminded me a lot about the garbage cans. So it was a sunscreen project, and it's focused on reducing melanoma, and they've put together a proposal to put sunscreen stations at public parks in the whole peninsula and Strawberry and whatnot. And they had a very nice slide presentation. They reached out to me in July, and I said I would bring it up as new business in the next meeting. I'm not sure if where the project stands right now, if they've moved forward on it. I think they're in high school, but if the committee's interested in having this student present on this idea, and he has a budget on what it might look like to support something like that in Community Park. If you're interested in hearing that, I could reach out to him.
Happy to reach out to him, yeah.
Yeah, and have him do a presentation on the project at the next meeting.
Nothing else, it's a wonderful experience.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Totally.
absolutely.
Yeah, and I want to be able to support ideas like this.
Absolutely.
And I do wish I could have said, oh, you can come to the next meeting. It happens more frequently, but we do have a sort of lag. But yeah, I'd love to put that on the agenda. I'd love to propose putting that on the agenda. Do I have a second?
Second.
Great. All in favor?
So,
Aye.
yeah, sorry, I was just going to say, see if there are any other items that you want to put on. And this is really just a list to work from. And when we develop the next agenda, it's usually myself with the chair and the liaison. So there's usually a list of things and some of those will make it onto the agenda and some don't. But the other things that were mentioned earlier were a trampoline at the playground and a walking meeting or an outdoor meeting.
Yes.
So if those could be added to the list, if you'd like to include those on the list, then we can do that.
I would be okay with dropping the trampoline from the future meeting, but I think it would be nice to discuss having a meeting of this committee where we walk around and meet people outside and have it as a public opportunity. So I'm getting some head nods.
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Great. Does the public have any suggestions for future meetings?
No, the public does not.
Okay. All right, we're now in the open forum. This is an opportunity for any citizen to address this committee on any matter. And Tony, do you want to read the rest of the preamble or should I?
I'm
happy to
the
continue.
chair is.
Okay. Upon being recognized by the chair, please state your name, address, and limit your oral statement to no more than 3 minutes. We may, matters that appear to warrant a more lengthy presentation or committee consideration may be agendized for future discussion at a later meeting. Christina, do we have anyone who wants to speak in the open forum?
I don't show anybody wanting to speak in the open.
We do.
forum. Oh,
Hi, I'd like to recognize you. Thanks for
and someone
coming.
did just raise their hand as well. On
Oh, someone did. Okay. You're already standing. Thank you.
I'm Barry Kuhn and I live at 222 Beach Road. And there are two things I sort of want to bring up. One, I feel like in section 9 or item 9, we maybe skipped sorry. Okay. We possibly skipped the report from February. We didn't discuss that.
Okay.
Or you didn't. And one thing in there stood out to me, and it's sort of what the previous speaker, Kelly, had been speaking about, was maintaining our lanes instead of building new ones.
Yep.
So I have the privilege of living basically almost at the bottom of Harry B. Allen Lane. I'm the one house in the recreation zone. And that lane is falling to pieces, right? I mean, there's pipes that are exposed and so I really think we need to maintain our lanes. And not just maintain what they look like, but maintain keeping litter out of them and things like that. The Harry B. Allen Stairs is a place where lots of people like to hang out. And there's quite a lot of litter down there, which I do my weekly litter pickup. And we have bonfires occasionally and things like that down there. So obviously it's not ideal. I feel if we take that to Artist View, we're spending money that we don't have that we need to do the other lanes with. And we're just inviting problems there to walk down to something that is only accessible at very low tide. If you've been down the Harry B. Allen stairs, you can actually see a little bit and walk around a little bit at medium tide, but there's nothing at the bottom of Artist View unless it's low tide. So that's sort of one thing I wanted to mention. Okay, now sorry, I lost my train of thought. Anyway, mostly I would like us to really emphasize the lanes. The other thing I noticed on the map of the zones, I don't see my home in it, number one, and I happen to live on the Strip. So my home is 3/4 on the Strip, and 1/4 on Pierce. The Strip confuses a lot of people. They think it's the beach, and it's actually not the beach. So I'm curious if I should elaborate, or everybody here is clear on where the Strip is.
Yes,
Everybody's clear. Okay, so it's not the beach. All right, thank you.
thank you very much.
And I'd love to be on the Lanes Committee.
Oh, amazing. All right.
All right, thank you. And I actually have a comment that was emailed in as well, so.
Oh, great.
I can read it. Hello, just got news of this meeting 15 minutes ago, so apologies for the late requested addition. I would like to propose landscaping to be added to the public property where Britain Avenue and Pelican Point meet. This area is dry, dead, and an eyesore to all residents on these two streets and their guests. Please find attached 4 photos, 3 of current condition and 1 of the aerial view to help orient members of the committee. And there are actually only 3 pictures that came through, so I will pull those up. Okay. All right, so these are the pictures that were sent through as part of this comment. This is at the corner of Britain and, what's the name of the other street, Albert? Britain and Pelican Point. That's from the other angle. And I think roundabout where that truck is over there, which is Alberto's truck actually, is kind of the area that he's referring to. Is that right?
From the
Alberto?
truck forward?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, and there is a bench there, so yeah, there is. It is city property.
Did you see his comment that he added a 4th photo? We might want to ask him if he wants to talk. Mhm.
I sent 2
This is
emails.
from Matt, right?
I believe the commenter is on Zoom. It's Matt Quinlan at 7 Britain. Yeah, if you're comfortable talking, Matt, then please go ahead.
Yeah, hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Matt Quinlan. I live at 7 Britain. I sent in the photos in the email. You know, this kind of area of the island, you know, it's kind of, you have to be met by this fork in the road that, you know, has an opportunity to be really nice, but unfortunately it's kind of, you know, not watered. It's, you know, things are kind of dying and just kind of, it seems as if those been neglected. I've lived on Britain for a few years and I've kind of always thought that. And today actually walked down there to kind of look around and ran into Alberto, and so I had an opportunity to talk with him about the potential of improving that area. You know, there is a bench there. Obviously, it's been identified as a nice, you know, place to sit and enjoy the island. But as you can see from the photographs, it's all just dry and dead and kind of, you know, in neglect, in my opinion. I'd love to see, you know, some landscaping go in that area and kind of that whole like front door, if you will, to this little segment of the island. I know just up the hill at Golden Gate and Belvedere Avenue, there was seemingly a similar project undertaken where some new vegetation and stuff was put in, and obviously that looks really nice. It's just kind of, it gives a nice impression to everybody that comes up to that corner, just the same way that, when somebody comes to this fork in the road, they would have a nice impression of that part of the island. I'll add that it's also like at the end of Belvedere Avenue. And so you're looking at this area the whole time as you're kind of driving that way. So it's not just something you kind of pass by and have to turn your head to see it. It's something that you're forced to encounter both on the way down because it's a fork in the road, and then when you're coming down Belvedere Avenue to leave Belvedere Avenue, you see it again. So it just seems to me like a really obvious, easy thing to fix. With some landscaping, a little bit of love, and some water. So as a resident, I just wanted to bring that to the attention of the committee and better understand what I need to do or what needs to be done by the residents here, my neighbors, to get that kind of on the radar of the city.
Thank you, Matt.
Given the nature of the open forum, would love to see if anyone on the committee wants to agendize this for discussion at the next meeting. That said, is this, when we talk about these things, Tony, with a suggestion like this, is agenda the next best way to proceed here? Or is this something where it could be done, outside of the committee's discussion habits?
Both. I think, we can add it to the list of possible agenda items. I can certainly coordinate between you and him on some thoughts. And at the next meeting, if we feel that it's necessary or that it would be useful, we can add it.
And I would be curious too, what maintenance, if at all, like tends to get done there from
Luckily, we have the maintenance supervisor right here, and he can give us a quick thought on it.
Yeah, is it on? Yeah. We pulled some scotch room there. We did some weed whacking there. We also had down in Pelican Point, some residents concerned about scotch brew, and they've been cleaning up on Pelican Point. So we did our part and cleaned up, weed whacked, and pulled some scotch room there recently.
Okay, great.
Yeah, sorry, I was just saying, before getting too into the weeds on from the agenda, we can definitely discuss offline.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. And thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
There is an additional public comment from the Zoom platform.
Yeah, I would love to recognize the commenter on Zoom.
Do you want me to read it? This is from Klaus, and he commented that he fully supports everything Barry Kuhn said, and he seconds her candidacy for the Lane Subcommittee.
Thank you, Klaus. Christina, is there anyone else who'd like to speak?
I see no further comment.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Yay.
Yeah.